The Young and the Restless Spoilers shock. For Kyle Abbott, the world had become increasingly divided between duty and desire, between truth and secrecy, between Clare and Audra. On the surface, he was doing what everyone expected, returning to Genoa City, reclaiming his role in the family, rebuilding the trust he'd broken. But beneath that polished facade, in the shadows of boardrooms and behind locked doors, he was slipping deeper into something he couldn't explain. Audra Charles had become a drug, dangerous, irresistible, and laced with something just out of reach. Their affair was not born from love, but from adrenaline. And while Kyle told himself it was just a distraction, a reaction to Clare's walls, he also knew he was lying. He didn't just want Audra. He needed her. And the more forbidden it became, the more he clung to it. But Clare wasn't blind. She had noticed the changes. The long absences. The sudden silences. The smell of perfume that wasn't hers. She had grown up under lies, trained by Jordan to read body language, to detect emotional shifts. And now, those instincts screamed. Something was wrong. Kyle was distant. Not in the way lovers drift apart, but in the way traitors quietly prepare to leave. Clare didn't want to believe it, but the signs were too many. And Victor, of course Victor, fed those doubts like poison in her ear. Kyle has a weakness for ambition, he told her in passing. You deserve someone who isn't ashamed to choose you in public. It wasn't just a warning, it was manipulation. Because Victor had a goal, one he never abandoned: control. And Clare, now a Newman by blood and name, needed to be protected from distractions. Victor didn't trust Kyle. Never had. And now, with Cole gone, Victor saw a chance to tighten his grip. If Clare abandoned her feelings for Kyle, she could be molded, directed, focused. But with love, she was unpredictable. Dangerous. So Victor planted the seed of betrayal. And Audra was the water. What Clare didn't know, what almost no one in Genoa City knew, was that Audra wasn't just an opportunist clawing her way to influence. She was something far more volatile, a woman running from a past too dark to outrun. And that past had a name. Carter. The man who haunted the nightmares of the nice estate. The assassin with no known origin. The shadow who had left a trail of blood through the French countryside. Everyone believed Carter to be a hired weapon. Some thought he worked for Kane. Others believed Victor had unleashed him to clean up business loose ends. But what no one dared consider was the possibility that Carter's mission wasn't just corporate, it was personal. From the moment Carter arrived in France, he kept his distance. Observed. Calculated. But there was one person he watched with something deeper than strategy. Audra. Every glance in her direction was controlled, but it trembled at the edges. A tightness around the mouth. A flicker in the eye. Not hatred. Not even lust. Recognition. They never spoke. They never touched. But they didn't have to. The silence between them said everything. And for the few viewers who looked closely, the truth flickered through the cracks. Audra wasn't just a Newman pawn. She was Carter's wife. Years ago, before either of them had touched Genoa City soil, they had been inseparable. A whirlwind romance that burned through South America, Europe, and back. Carter, before the violence, before the blood, had been charming. Brilliant. Ruthless in business, but tender with her. She had loved him. Deeply. But as his jobs grew darker and his world narrowed into something dangerous, Audra saw the edge. And she ran. No explanation. No goodbye. Just vanished. Carter searched. For years, he hunted whispers. Changed names. Bribed informants. But he never found her. Until now. Standing just feet away. His wife. Smiling at Kyle Abbott like nothing had ever happened. But Carter didn't explode. He didn't threaten. He didn't confess. He simply watched. And waited. Because Carter wasn't in Genoa City just to eliminate liabilities. He was there to complete something unfinished. Audra felt it. Every time his eyes touched her from across the room, something in her stomach flipped. She had spent years building walls, pretending her past didn't exist. And now, it stood before her in flesh and blood. She knew she should leave, confess, run again, but she didn't. Part of her still loved him. Or maybe she loved the part of herself that once believed. She hired a private investigator. Tapped security footage. Found inconsistencies in Kyle's movements. But what she found wasn't just Kyle and Audra sneaking around. She found footage, blurry but unmistakable, of Carter and Audra making eye contact. Freezing. And then, walking past each other like strangers. It was too perfect. Too rehearsed. Claire knew what she was seeing. Not lovers. Not enemies. History. And she realized the truth before anyone else. Audra wasn't seducing Kyle by accident. She was sent. By Victor? By someone else? It didn't matter. Claire's heart shattered under the weight of it. Her father was dead. Her mother was watching from a distance. And Kyle, the one person she had believed in, was dancing in the arms of a ghost from another life. Victor watched all of this unfold, never lifting a hand. Because chaos was a tool. And the more tangled Kyle became, the easier it would be to remove him from Claire's orbit. But Carter had other plans. He approached Audra one night outside society. The alley was quiet. The rain light. "I found you," he said softly. She didn't flinch. She didn't scream. "I knew you would," she whispered. "I thought I was dead to you." He stepped closer. "You were never dead. Just gone." She didn't ask what he wanted. She already knew. But what no one, not even Carter, knew was that Audra wasn't the same woman who had once run from his darkness. She had learned how to survive. How to strike first. And as their past reignited, it threatened to burn every secret they both held, especially the ones involving Victor, Kane, and the names Carter had been paid to silence. Because Audra wasn't just Carter's wife. She might be the only person alive who knew who sent him in the first place. And now, Genoa City would become the battleground where love, betrayal, and revenge collided. Would you like to continue this arc? Perhaps with Claire confronting Kyle, Carter forcing Audra to choose between him and Kyle, or Victor's secret connection to Carter being exposed. Let me know, and I'll expand the next chapter. In the intricate web of Genoa City's chaos, Kyle Abbott had become the most tragic kind of victim, a man seduced not just by beauty, but by careful design. Audra Charles knew exactly how to bait him, when to brush his hand, how to laugh just a little too long, which old wounds to tap until they bled. And Kyle, already fragile from heartbreak and uncertainty, never stood a chance. Audra had studied him long before she struck. She didn't stumble into his orbit. She engineered it. Every touch, every late-night meeting, every perfectly timed coincidence was a move on her part. Not out of love. But out of obligation. Because while the world thought of Audra as a climber, an ambitious woman tangled in boardroom games, few knew she was running from something far more dangerous. Or rather, someone. Carter. She had thought he was gone for good. That the man who once swore to protect her had vanished beneath the weight of his own crimes. And for years, he had. Until nice. Until his cold eyes locked with hers from across the crowd. Until the world stopped spinning for one excruciating second and she realized that her past was no longer behind her. It was watching her. Breathing her in. Judging. Wanting. And soon, claiming. Kyle, for all his charm and intelligence, was not equipped to deal with the kind of storm Audra carried. He saw her as alluring, mysterious, a thrill wrapped in perfume and lipstick, but he never saw the strings behind her smile. He never saw Victor's influence pulling her into his granddaughter's orbit. He never saw how Audra had been trained, not just as a woman of ambition, but as a survivor. And Kyle, tragically, was merely a man craving distraction. And like most men, he mistook danger for desire. But Audra's plans had begun to fray the moment Carter reappeared. His presence in Nice was no coincidence. It was a message. And when he finally cornered her outside society days later, all illusions of escape vanished. "I found you," Carter said, his voice low, intimate. The kind of voice that once lulled her to sleep, and now tightened every muscle in her spine. "I knew you would," Audra replied, steeling herself. "You always do." He moved closer, his posture relaxed, but his eyes wild with history. "We could go. Tonight. No one would follow. I've got more than enough now." "Enough," she echoed. "You mean blood money?" He flinched. "You always say things like that when you're scared." "I'm not scared of you," she said, but her voice cracked. "I'm scared of what you've become." "I became this because of you," he snapped. "Because you left. Because I had nothing left but shadows and contracts." "You became a killer long before I ran," she whispered, each word heavy. "And I ran because I couldn't breathe anymore. You killed people for power. For money. You stopped caring about what we had, and you started worshipping what we could take." Carter looked at her for a long moment. Then "I built a new life." "With him?" Carter's voice turned to venom. "With that pretty boy Abbott who couldn't string two thoughts together without his father's legacy behind him? That's who you run to now?" "This has nothing to do with Kyle," she snapped. "He's just a game?" Carter offered. "A step in your climb? Or just a bed to cry into when the guilt gets too loud?" Audra looked away. Because the truth was, she didn't know anymore. She had come to Genoa City to disappear. To reinvent. To become someone who didn't tremble in alleys or jump at the sight of leather gloves. And Kyle had been comfort. Not love. Not salvation. But distraction. She never meant to fall back into old patterns. But Carter's reappearance tore through the version of herself she had built so carefully, and now everything was crumbling. Carter stepped forward again. "Come with me," he said gently. "No more blood. No more jobs. Just the two of us. Like it was." "You're lying," she whispered. "You'll never stop. You don't know how." He reached out, his hand brushing hers. "Let me try." She pulled away like his skin burned. "I'm not going with you. I won't run anymore." His jaw tightened. The softness drained from his features. "Then what happens next is on you." Audra didn't sleep that night. Kyle, oblivious to the storm approaching, messaged her as he always did, asking if she was okay, if she wanted to meet. She didn't answer. She stared at her phone for hours, the screen glowing with possibilities and regrets. Victor, from his corner of the empire, watched silently. He had known about Carter. About Audra. He had planted her not because she was loyal, but because she was desperate. And desperate women could be controlled until they couldn't. Claire, now fully aware of Kyle's betrayal, didn't cry. She simply watched him from afar. Saw the guilt behind his smiles. The confusion behind his charm. She didn't blame him entirely. She blamed the world that raised them to believe love was negotiable. That power was always worth more than truth. But the truth was coming. Carter wasn't finished. And if Audra wouldn't run with him, then she would run from him. Because love, once twisted by blood and survival, doesn't fade. It festers. And in Genoa City, every festering secret has its day of reckoning. Would you like the next part to follow Carter's retaliation, Audra turning to Claire or Nikki for protection, or Kyle finally realizing he's been used. I'm ready to continue this explosive arc however you'd like.